Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. He's really the topic of the month. He's really the topic of the college football world. It is Lane Kiffin. Let me say this. I am actually genuinely stunned on a day-to-day basis how much I get asked about Lane Kiffin, right? I'll be on a business call, and before we talk about, hey, let's bring on this advertiser or whatever, somebody will be like, what do you think Kiffin's going to do? You'll be on with friends that aren't even huge college football fans. You think Kiffin's going to Florida? You think he's going to LSU? So it's unbelievable. I was thinking about it earlier today. I was like, this guy has really been in the spotlight since his mid-20s at USC. NFL fans know him from the Raiders days. SEC fans have known him for 15 plus years because of the 1 year at Tennessee. West Coast fans know him because of his time at USC. This guy, just his history is unbelievable. Everybody seems to want to know what is his next move. And I will say this, is that I do find the whole situation with Lane Kiffin fascinating, right? Because we live in this world where he can say all of the right things. Hey, we're focused on Ole Miss. It's 1 week at a time. We're not worried about anything. But the longer this season goes on, without him making any sort of public commitment to Ole Miss, listen, there's an easy way for him to end all this speculation. All he's got to do is come out and say, I am committed to Ole Miss. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not taking any other calls, let alone actually sign a contract extension. And so every day that he goes on without doing one of those two things, either a public extension or at least saying I ain't going anywhere, stop asking me about it, the more it becomes a story. And as a matter of fact, I will say this, watching his press conference on Monday, remember, Ole Miss ironically gets set to host Florida on Saturday. Of course, Florida believes they are in the Lane Kiffin market. It has now become, even his Monday press conferences, they're not about, hey, how do you stop the run? What do you think about zone defense? It's, hey, what is your future? What is going on? What's next? Okay, so Matt, we're going to do a little pivot from what I told you. I want to play the second piece of sound that I sent you first, okay? So this is how crazy things are getting at Ole Miss right now. One of the first questions that he was asked on Monday, and again, keep in mind that they are playing Florida. Many believe that he is the lead candidate at Florida. He was actually asked this concept of, hey, dude, you're an in-demand guy, but let me even backtrack. This piece of sound is going to show you how crazy things are at Ole Miss. The fact that at a Monday press conference, he was basically asked, hey, there's this perception that if you make the college football playoff, that you can't leave for another job. Do you believe that is true? So, Matt, play the second piece of sound where Lane Kiffin is basically asked, hey, if you got to choose between Ole Miss and Florida on the last day of the season, is that something you can do? Matt, play the sound.
Like you said a couple weeks ago, but if Florida wants you and if Ole Miss wants you, it'll necessitate you making a decision. I was just curious, with the portal opening on January 2nd, do you even have time to think about that, or how important is it to come to whatever decision before the portal opens?
I don't know. I'm not that far down the road. I said it last week, and you guys think I was joking, or the South Carolina, everybody wants to talk about other jobs and everything, and I think you're 2-3 weeks away from coaching for your own job, so you better make sure you're doing really well where you are, because as we've seen out there, I've said 1 win put you out of the top 10, now 2 wins might put you out of the top 25, and 3 might get you fired. So I ain't figured all that out. I'm trying to keep our winning streak, get to 8-0 at home.
Listen, I think that's a good answer, right? Hey, I'm focused on winning this game because, if I lose 2 or 3 of these in a row, forget other jobs. Y'all are going to want me out of here. Same time, though, that is the type of question that Lane Kiffin is being asked. By the way, let's keep in mind, That is a Monday press conference. Okay. That's not post game when national media is there, when the other team's media is there. Like, there's no Florida reporters probably likely in Mississippi on a Monday press conference. So it was very likely his own media member that was asking him, hey, high school recruiting, the signing day is in December. Portal opens in January. Like, how would you balance hypothetically a coaching job? Okay. So that was the first piece of sound that was interesting. And again, there's an easy way for Lane Kiffin to end these questions. Say, yeah, I don't know why you're asking me this because I am not going anywhere. My agents are working now on an extension for me at Ole Miss. That is the way Dan Lanning has answered it. Even, we can accuse Lincoln Riley of lying, but Lincoln Riley did answer a question about his future the other day. And so you have that question. Then you have another question. This is the same press conference from Monday. And this to me is very interesting because there is now a perception that basically what qualifies as a good job has changed, right? So this is the big conversation is, do you even need to leave an Ole Miss in 2025, or can you build it up at Ole Miss and do everything at Ole Miss that you could do at an LSU, at a Florida? Could you be, say, in the Big Ten, does Matt Rule need to leave Nebraska? Or, that's probably not even a good example. Like, basically, in this era with NIL and the transfer portal, what even qualifies as a good job? And I think there's a perception like, oh, Ole Miss, that's as good of a job, if not better of a job than LSU and Florida. And so everybody is waiting on that. Even Nick Saban was like, look, what makes a good job has changed. Well, Lane Kiffin was asked about that. And again, with the backdrop of he may have a very tough decision to make over the next couple weeks, listen to what he says because he opens it. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, now this is a long clip, but I wanted to play the full sound, so I wanted to be fair to Lane Kiffin. I want to be transparent. I'm not trying to get him with a gotcha moment of 10 seconds where he says something crazy, okay? But he's asked about what makes a good job. And the first probably about 30 to 40 seconds or so is him basically talking about, you know what, it's changed. It's about NIL. It's about what money you have to pay your players. But then the longer the conversation goes on, the longer his answer goes on, he starts talking about other stuff that makes it sound like there are some other jobs that, in his opinion, may actually be better than the one he's got. Long piece of sound. But again, I wanted to be fair to Lane Kiffin. It's about a 2-minute clip. Matt, go ahead and play the second piece of sound from Monday's press.
The aspects that make up a good job for a college head coach, what's the top of your priority list?
I wasn't ready for that one. I think that's evolved and changed, and there's different things in it. I've said to you guys a couple years ago, I think, and this was before Cap, but I said, I think that it's going to move to, people used to say, okay, when people wanted to hire you or something and interview and what questions do you have, what are your concerns? Okay, people used to say, facilities, how many practice fields, those things. And I said, I don't think, I think that's changed. It's going to change. And it's going to be, how much NIL do you have? When it was all collective, how is your collective? How's it run? How much do you have? Because that's before this, that was the salary cap, meaning that's how much money you're going to have. And I know some people sometimes think, well, okay, that's not a big deal, but just look at professional sports when it's not the same, like baseball and the payrolls. And over time, who wins and who doesn't win. And somebody may have outlier years once in a while, but, and so now that's a little equaled out, but there's still, how much are you giving to Rev, to your football program? And then how much do you have collective wise? I think it's a big question, but, people will talk about it's narrowed, like I heard Coach Saban say, and some stuff has narrowed, and as I've referred to, because you can't stockpile, at those, whatever blue bloods you want to call it or refer to it. But there's still things there that you're still going to struggle to beat those guys, because kids are still recruited and they see size of stadiums and tradition and Heisman's and national championships and then your location, to talent. So I think all those are in there, but it's slid a little time over, I think when that question probably early was that what is your assistant coach's pool? Now is what is your player pool?
So I saw that clip on social media on Monday, and it was funny because the first wave of people was Ole Miss fans that saw that and said, "See, it's about a collective. Nobody does it better than us." I believe the guy is Walker Jones. I want to say the guy that runs the Ole Miss collective. I actually met him. I sat on a panel with him one time. Really nice guy. But he was just like, yeah, it's all about it's all about NIL, and it's all about this. And then the deeper he goes into the conversation, he starts talking about, you know what? It is about NIL, but it's also about, once you get kids on campus, it's about how big your stadium is, how many Heismans you've had, how many NFL guys you've had. And so to me, this goes back to what I have been saying. And listen, I will say this because I know people are going to say, oh, all you're doing is you have no proof. No, I have no proof what Lane Kiffin wants to do. Okay. I'm not claiming that I know what Lane Kiffin wants to do because I don't think anyone, including Lane Kiffin at this exact moment, knows what he wants to do. But by definition, in saying that he does not know what he wants to do or saying that no one knows what he wants to do, that also means that he is leaving open the option of not being the Ole Miss head coach next year. And by the way, we got Ole Miss fans in the chat. I'm not trying to crap on your team or crap on your program. I've been to Oxford. It's a beautiful city. I had a blast. I was there probably 8-9 years ago at this point. I love Oxford. Listen, I think for college football, it's kind of good if he stays in Oxford. But I have to talk about the stories that matter in the manner that we need to discuss them. And the longer that he goes on without being committal long-term, the more it leaves the door open that that he could leave. Now, really quickly, Matt, I'm just going to pull up the comment that I saw because I think it plays into what I want to talk about. So Walter Happy Hopper, great listener, Walter, we appreciate your support. He says Lane has never signed an extension during the season. This has happened 4 years in a row here at Ole Miss. Walker, it's a great question, and it's a great comment. Here is my issue with that, though. You don't have to sign the extension tomorrow. But listen, you're going to get whatever you want from wherever you're going to go, whether it is money, whether it's staff pool, whether it's NIL, whether it's whatever. You're going to get that wherever. I've said from probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've said Lane Kiffin is going to end up the highest paid coach in college football next year. It's just a question of, is it going to be at Ole Miss? Is it going to be at Florida? Is it going to be at LSU? In theory, is it going to be somewhere else? Okay. But at the same time, I understand that he hasn't signed any extension until the end of the season. I vividly remember, when he agreed to stay at Ole Miss instead of going to Auburn. It was the Saturday morning of Thanksgiving weekend, 2022. So, I get what you're saying, Walter, excuse me. I think I said Walter. But the counter to that is that if he wants to end the noise, if he wants to put his entire fan base at ease, if he wants to put his players at ease, he can say, look, yes, we are negotiating something to keep me here long-term. This is where I want to be. It's not done yet, but I promise you, not only am I not taking any calls, my representation is not taking calls either, and he has not done that. It's very easy to do that. Again, you mentioned, Walter, that the last 3 or 4 years, he has signed an extension at the end of every year. Okay. But the counter to that is the last 3 or 4 years, Dan Lanning's name has been in job searches, and every single year he says, I'm not going anywhere. Don't ask me about this. I told my agent, don't take any calls. Listen, I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm just saying if you have zero interest, there is a way to do it in which you don't have to answer these questions. Listen, there's an easy way to do it. You know how you do it? You do it the way Matt Rule did it. You know how Matt Rule has to stop answering questions about Penn State? Guess what? He signs an extension that keeps him at Nebraska. Now, you could argue he was taking questions until he signed it. He could have announced it earlier. It doesn't change the fact Matt Rule is not getting questions about Penn State anymore because he signed the extension. Rhett Lashley is not getting questions anymore about Arkansas or any other job because he signed an extension at SMU. And so all I'm saying is the longer this goes on, the more speculation it's going to create, and whether Lane Kiffin wants it or not, the more distractions he's going to have. Again, we're not going to replay the sound, but listen to the questions he's being asked. He's being asked straight up, if you got to choose between Ole Miss and Florida on the final day of the season, what are you going to do? How does the portal impact it? How does high school recruiting impact it? And so there are just so many easy ways to end this conversation. He refuses to do it. My last thought as I was listening to all that sound yesterday, I do think his non-commitment to Ole Miss, in my opinion, changes a little bit of what we talked about a few weeks ago when he was on Pat McAfee. If you remember, he was on Pat McAfee. We're going to play the sound in half a second. But he was basically asked about all these different things that are out there. He said, money does not define who I am. Matt, play Lane Kiffin. This was now several weeks ago. So I want to be clear. It was not from this previous Monday, but probably from about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Matt, play Lane Kiffin on the McAfee show.
Go to that, what Pat said there, just so you know, because you haven't known me very long, Pat. I have never made a decision based off of money, nor will I. And
love that.
For a lot of people, they're just like, well, money and it does this and does that. I've seen too many examples in life where money does not buy happiness. So I am never going to make a decision off of money, nor do I care about it. And
it's good to have.
Jimmy Sexton gets really mad when I say that.
He's got enough.
We got to get this. We got to get this. And I'm like, Jimmy, I don't care. And he goes, I do.
He said, that's why I'm here. Of course. Yeah. That is why I'm here. But
to the Jackson, he's awesome.
So one, I actually forgot that Jimmy Sexton part at the end. It cracked me up. But what I would also say, I do think when you hear that sound again with the context of what Lane Kiffin said, I just think it makes for an interesting couple weeks. And again, only Lane Kiffin knows. And I do think part of this is going to be how deep does Ole Miss go in the playoff? At this point, it's hard to imagine a scenario where Ole Miss is not in the playoff. Okay, remember, they're 9-1, final 2, Florida at home this weekend, then at Mississippi State. In theory, they could go 1-1 in those 2 games, and they would still make the college football playoff. And so the big question is a Florida, is an LSU willing to wait until that playoff run is over? But I will say, when I hear that McAfee sound with what he said on Monday, it does change things a little bit for me, right? Because he said to McAfee, I'm not motivated by money. So it's not just going to be about the highest bid. It's going to be about what job puts you in the best position to win at the highest level consistently. And then when you go to the second answer that he gave that we listened to earlier, where he says, yeah, it's about NIL, revenue creation. And yes, it's about money for players, but it's also about stadium size, all the things that recruiting, that players still care about. So fascinating conversation. Only Lane Kiffin knows. But what I keep going back to is if he was not a candidate at Florida, maybe LSU, there's an easy way for him to end that speculation and just say, we're working on an extension. I'm not going anywhere. If he wants to stay at Ole Miss, there's no reason he has to create extra leverage. I think he's keeping his options open, and we'll see what happens after Ole Miss's season ends, when it ends, and how long other schools are willing to wait.